now by Emily Thornberry, the Shadow Defence Secretary. And a very good morning to you, Ms Thornberry. Have you come on here to tell us you're resigning from the front bench?
No, I'm not going to resign from the front bench. I like Pat and I respect Pat, but I think he's wrong. I think we have got ourselves into a position as a nation where the Brexiteers wanted to leave Europe, but they have no plan as to what will happen next. I think we had a Tory government that allowed us to have a referendum with no plan B. I feel like they have led the country into a dark wood and they've just abandoned us there. And I think that the UK now needs some leadership. I think that it's incumbent on the opposition to do that. I think that it's really important that our people are looked after, that any negotiations that happen look after our people as well. I think that what happened in the referendum was that half of the country felt that the current system does not look after them. You know, they are not getting what they ought to get out of our country. So whether that's housing, whether that's people, competing for their jobs, whether that's access to services, and we need to make. And the tragedy is that many of those things.
How equipped you are as a party to deal with it. What do you say
Absolutely.
to your shadow cabinet colleagues? You've been sitting around the table discussing policy, discussing the referendum with them. Well, many of them, and we hear many more, many of them have resigned or been sacked, many more are to go. What do you say?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is that I'm quite surprised. We had a shadow cabinet meeting on Friday in which we discussed at length the referendum. And we didn't really hear any of this at the Shadow Cabinet. I mean, at that Shadow Cabinet, I explained that I was not going to be in a position to be able to launch my defence review at this stage because obviously the effect of Brexit was such that we would have to look again at defence because it will obviously have a big impact on that. But it was also because I want to make sure that we have as unified a party as possible. And
well, you don't. I mean, I can stand here and say, or I can sit here and say, you actually don't. And we can all see it now. You don't have a unified party. You don't even have a unified front bench.
I would appeal to people within the Parliamentary Labour Party to think of the country and to think of the importance of a united Labour Party that is the alternative to the government.
Well, that's the government, a bit unfair to them, isn't it? I mean, they are thinking. They would say, and some of them have been on here saying, well, they are thinking of the country, and they are thinking, for the sake of the country, that you've got the wrong leader. He's not going to get elected, and he's not going to be able to offer effective opposition.
But it's odd, isn't it? Because there were sort of dire warnings about what would happen with the local council elections, and yet with the local council elections, we got as good, if not better, a result than we had done during the last Parliament, and we won all the mayoral elections, and obviously, in London with a whopping great majority, fantastic results in Bristol. And so all the doomsayers at that stage were proved to be wrong.
Does he look like a winner then to you, Jeremy Corbyn? You think he could take on Boris Johnson?
He doesn't have the same style as me. He doesn't have the same style as a lot of politicians. But you know what? I think that when Jeremy said, and he's been criticised for this, but from a lot of people, when he said, I give the European Union 7.5 out of 10, I think that he spoke with an authenticity and a reality is that he spoke for the British people, because there were a lot of British people who voted Remain who would only give it that amount.
Maybe helped sink the Remain campaign.
No, because I think that if David Cameron had stepped aside a bit and allowed a bit more of a Labour voice to come forward, it would have engaged better with the majority of the people.
And the reports tell us that Mr Cameron's team begged Jeremy Corbyn to get involved with him, and he refused.
No, they didn't want to. He didn't want to share a platform with them because our approach to Europe is different, and our approach to Europe, we think, spoke better and more straightforwardly to our voters, and so therefore we did not. And David Cameron had made this as it was all about him, all about his fantastic deal, all about his leadership. I'm going to, I can answer this, and let me say that, and standing outside Number 10. If we had had a bit more of an authentic Labour voice speaking to our voters, I think that might have shifted things a bit. And I'll tell you what that means, right? When you're asking me what kind of leader Jeremy Corbyn is, actually, am I saying that Jeremy Corbyn is a better leader than David Cameron? I think I probably am. As I say, it's a different style, and it's not one that the Westminster Village is used to, and it's not one that I adopt, but it is one that is.
This is a discussion you have to be having so many of your front bench colleagues. Are you horrified at what they're doing? And those that have the pen poised now on the resignation letter, are you saying, stop, you're destabilising a great leader who's going to be our next Labour Prime Minister?
I'm saying that it is now is not the time to further destabilise the country. I say that the markets are tumbling, the pound is going through the floor. people are lost. Our country is lost. We do not at this stage, for the Labour Party to go through internecine warfare. We must raise our eyes above our tummy buttons and look towards the country and work out what it is that is best for our people.
You've got to be in power to make a difference.
Yes.
Does Mr. Corbyn look like a winner? Let me term it differently. Is he the best leader you could have?
Jeremy Corbyn is the leader. He is a good leader. He has had good election results, and I think that. Leader? Well, let me think. I don't think that, for example, Obama is available. I mean, there are other people, that one could think of, but Jeremy is the leader, and he was elected with a 60% majority a year ago, less than a year ago, 60% majority of our membership, and the membership. If there was an election tomorrow, and of course it will be for them to decide who our next leader is, they will vote for him in increased numbers. That is the reality. It is our duty as the front bench to make him as good a leader as he can be, and for us to be a team.
If he decided to stand down because he's got this vote of no confidence, people voting with their feet, the present company accepted from the front bench of his party, if he decided to stand down, would you try to persuade him to reconsider?
He's not going to stand down. There's a stupid question, sorry, but it's a stupid question. He's not going to stand down. He has been elected less than a year ago on a huge mandate. The one electoral test that he's had, the straight electoral test on the local elections, he did well. We did well as a party. We have now got our country turned upside down and inside out with no idea of where we're going now. We do not go for a leadership challenge now.
So you think he can win back those voters who in the referendum campaign, on that single issue, said, no, we don't want to go with your point of view. Labour supporters who said, and by and large, there was a single simple message saying, we are so concerned about immigration. We are so concerned about the number of people coming to this country quite legally and putting so much pressure on our public services. And Jeremy Corbyn has told them time and time again, it's good for you. They are free to come. Do you think that's a good policy to stick with?
So there's two things I want to say. The first is, I think we have to learn from the Scottish referendum. When the Scottish referendum happened, instead of us reaching out to our Labour voters after the Scottish referendum, we got involved in all sorts of fights in the Scottish Labour Party. And I think that was wrong. And I think that, looking back on it, a lot of people regret it. And I think we should learn from that.
Okay.
So that's number one.
Right, so
and number two, in relation to immigration, I think that, again, in all of this fuss, how much have people heard of the speech that he made yesterday on where we think the future ought to be for us with our relationship with Europe? And he said we must look again at the aspect of immigration. You asked me a question about immigration, let me answer it.
Well, but you don't think, I'm going to rephrase it, that you're fundamentally out of touch with huge swathes of Labour supporters who don't live in the metropolitan bubble?
I think that there are people, wherever they live, who feel that they are left behind. I think that there are people. I spoke on the day of the referendum to a guy who said, I'm thinking of voting out, Emily, because I've got two grown-up sons and they can't get anywhere to live. And I think there's either too many people in this country or we're not building enough houses.
And if Jeremy Corbyn does go, would you serve under a new leader, if asked?
I will always do what I think is best for the Labour Party. I believe that the Labour Party is the best party to be in government, and I will always put all my efforts into ensuring that we get the best Labour government that we can.
Shadow Defence Secretary, thank you very much indeed. Emily Thornberry there.